Hello, welcome to Taylor Tuesday. I'm Dr. Andrew Schneider, and with me is Dr. Patrick DeHeer, and we are happy that you're joining us tonight. I've been a member of Taylor Medical since the inception, and I've realized a lot of great savings and learned about a lot of great companies through this, through webinars like this. Dr. DeHeer, you've been with Taylor Medical since the beginning also, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's correct, and I echo your sentiments on it. It is a terrific organization and really beneficial for those who are involved.
If you've missed any Taylor Tuesdays, they're all archived on our website. Just go to taylormedical.com, and if you click the webinars button in the upper right-hand corner, you will see a whole list of webinars. I recommend you check them out, and you'll visit the companies, and you'll find new savings for your office. You'll new products for your office, new services that will benefit your patients. I'm supposed to hold on. That was supposed to be me doing that. So Siobhan doesn't kill me later. So that's where the webinars tab is, right on the top of Taylor Medical. And if you're not familiar with Taylor Medical, it's the first time you're joining Taylor Tuesdays, I want to take a couple minutes to explain what Taylor Medical can do to help your practice. Taylor Medical is a GPO, a group purchasing organization, and we leverage the buying power of our members to negotiate discounts with key vendors in the podiatric industry, which saves you money on the products, supplies, and capital equipment that you're ordering for your practice. So before you order anything, whether it be gauze or a treatment chair, be sure to check with Taylor Medical, send it to the office first and see what kind of savings we can have for you. The membership for the GPO is free, and you receive a 1% annual rebate on all qualifying purchases. If you haven't already, sign up for a free, no obligation cost analysis today. Email an Excel spreadsheet with 3 months of your most recent order history to admin@taylormedical.com, and that will get you started. But now I would like to introduce our speakers for today. The topic is merchant services for the healthcare industry. Is Brad Roes and Rich Williamson. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves and give their background. And then we'll be back at the end for some questions. So I'm going to pass it on to you guys. Thanks so much for joining us.
Excellent. Thank you for having us. Okay, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, my name is Rich Williamson. I am the Director of Member Services here at USPAY. I'm also one of the senior statement analysts. I've been in the industry for a little bit over 15 years now. One of the main things that I enjoy about working with USPAY and the GPO members is that this company is one of the few out there that tries to be as transparent as possible when it comes to pricing in the merchant services industry. And we don't cookie cut anything for the members. We will customize a program, and each office is treated a little bit differently, and we want to make sure the office is set up correctly. And along the way, we're generally able to save them money as well. And in my spare time, I try to stay active on the weekends. I'm still a soccer referee, and I basically chase a golf ball around every Sunday.
All right. Very nice. All right. Thanks, everyone, for having me today. My name is Brad Roes. I'm the Director of Sales here at USPAY. And at USPAY, we're a specialty healthcare credit card processor. We can process for any type of business, but we tend to focus on healthcare. And we're also a contracted supplier for these GPOs out there. So any group purchasing organization, they negotiate products and services at discounts. We were awarded the bid to several of the largest GPOs in the country because of our specialty with healthcare. So for today, what we're going to discuss, we're going to focus on a brief overview of merchant services as a whole, the different pricing structures that are out there, and then we're going to circle back and talk about the needs of a healthcare facility and why choosing the correct processor is important. So what is merchant services, or what are merchant services? Now, it's a service that businesses rely on to handle the details of accepting credit cards and debit cards, whether it's in person, over the phone, or online. Simply put, credit card processors, we facilitate businesses the ability for them to accept non-cash payments from their clients. A merchant service provider, or you might see it up on the screen today as an MSP, what they do, they function as a liaison between banks, credit card companies, your business, and your customers. Now, with the proper merchant service provider, you can depend on receiving your payment securely into your bank account on time and also in the correct dollar amount. Now, the payment processing cycle shown here, it shows the breakdown of all steps that a simple transaction goes through. And all this happens every single day when you process a payment in less than half of a second. It's going from the customer to the merchant's terminal. It goes then to the acquiring bank. It goes through the card brand to the issuing bank, back over to the card network, acquiring bank, back to that merchant's terminal, meaning your business's terminal, and then it's approved or declined, and it prints out that receipt. Now, when you accept credit cards, there is a payment processing fee that is charged by the credit card processor. Now, this is for the ability to accept credit card payments, and typically these fees are paid as a percentage, and also there is a small flat fee, and that's a dollar amount flat fee. Now, for every credit card or debit card that exists out there, there's a preset rate that the MSP pays to the issuing bank. This is referred to as interchange rate. Some of you might know the term interchange if you ever looked at your merchant statement, but this rate directly correlates with the cost that each bank has for these cards. So typically cards with more perks, they have a higher associated interchange rate because the card has additional costs to recoup. Now you want to think about rewards points or airline miles or cash back. When that happens, you're going to have a higher interchange rate. Now, most people view credit cards as a necessary evil in today's world, but at one point, this was looked at as a tool for both the business and the consumer. Restaurants typically were busy on Thursdays or Fridays or Saturdays because of payday, but now they have businesses packed throughout the entire week. Or some person would walk into a business, only have enough cash in their pocket to purchase a 30-inch TV, but now they could pay with their credit card, upgrade, and get that 50-inch. Now, this costs more, so both the business and the consumer is happy. So taking credit cards was often looked at as a winning tool for everyone involved, but now it happens more often than cash. So people are looking at it more as a inconvenience because of the fees associated with it. So when you are a business that's accepting credit cards, you're opening up what's called a merchant account. Now, through your provider, this typically is constructed on one of three pricing structures. So there's a tiered pricing structure, there's an Interchange Plus pricing structure, and now there's also flat rate pricing. And Interchange, that's at the core of all these pricing models. It's one of the merchant services providers' cost of doing business. Now, everyone in their wallet right now, you have a card in your pocket, and that card would fall into one of about 600 different types of categories, and each category has their own interchange rate and a transaction fee. Now, Rich, he's been doing this forever, and I'm going to have him jump in here to help explain some of the concepts between interchange and then all three of those different pricing models. So let's see here. Rich, can you kind of jump into it here?
Yeah, absolutely. And as Brad was saying, in addition to interchange, you're also going to hear the term pass-through. This is the true cost of every single card that's out there. So you're going to have interchange costs and pass-through fees, and regardless of who is processing the credit cards, we all pay those. That is the starting point. So if you turn around and somebody tells you that, you know, they're not paying any fees, or they are somewhere along the line, if they're collecting credit and debit cards and they have somebody processing those transactions for them, they are paying fees somewhere. Or in some businesses, and we'll get into it a little bit later on, you are able to, you don't really want to use the term surcharge, but you are able to pass on some or most of the fees to your patient or your customer. That's something that's been relatively new, but it is something that we can offer some of the Taylor members. The ones that do not take insurance, we can discuss that with. If you take insurance and you're trying to do that, I wouldn't recommend, but again, that's something we get into down the road. Now, up on the screen, this is a partial page from a statement that we get in every single day. Not sure if this is from a Taylor member or not, but over on the left, you see all of these descriptors. Those are the different card types, or just some of the card types, since it's only got Visa listed on here. It doesn't have MasterCard and Discover, that this particular business took. And when you look over to the right, this is a rate that they were charged for the card. Now, some processors will turn around, and if you don't know, I mean, this happens to be not the true cost. These are marked up. But you and most consumers and most business owners aren't going to know that. Your processor may or may not tell you that. They may have a page where it'll say discount rate, 1%. And then you may see a chart, this chart somewhere along. So now you're paying 1% plus whatever these are marked up. The point that we're trying to make on this is you can see the cost on some of these cards. This one's 2.5%. This one's 2.76%. This one's less than 0.5%. This one's over 3%. So all of these cards this business took, they all paid all of these fees, and you can see to the right the fee for each of the card, and it's just simple math. And the top one was $104 sale, and if you take the 2.06% and add the dime to it, that particular business paid $2.24 for this particular card. That's the interchange cost. Somewhere else on this statement are the pass-through fees and whatnot. And again, every processor, like Brad mentioned, they set their statements up completely different. There really is no way to regulate it, and a lot of times it is designed to confuse the business owner. You really don't know what it is you're paying. USPAY, the reason we were awarded the contracts with the GPO is we would turn around and say, okay, for example, this is the statement you sent us. You paid $2.24 if you took that card using whomever. With USPAY, maybe you would have only paid $1.60, whatever the case may be. So now you can turn around and say, well, what's the difference? The difference is, with us being the contracted suppliers for the GPO, we were vetted out and chosen to provide the service to the members, or offer the service to the members, because we're going to come in like the other products, the tangible products you get through Taylor, at a lower rate, thus saving you money in this particular category. The next slide, when Brad mentioned the tiered pricing structure, the easiest way to explain this is the merchant service provider will win on some cards and they lose money on other cards. And obviously, for the merchant services provider to stay in business, they have to win and make and turn a profit on more cards than they lose. But the average transaction rate for a qualified transaction in a retail environment is 1.79%. And generally, the term qualified would mean a face-to-face transaction that's swiped or now dipped with the onset of the EMV chip cards. You can see over here, he's got debit in here. So debit cards, regular credit cards, gift cards, they generally would fall into this particular category. Now you have a mid-qualified category where the average rate is 2.49%. Those are going to be some of your points cards. Those are going to be cards. This is card not present. I don't know if you can see it, but the same card that you hand the doctor, if you ran it through the washing machine, for example, and it's not going to swipe or dip, and you make the merchant or the doctor's office key it in, that's going to be considered a mid-qualified transaction, even though it's the same card. And it all gets down to, in the eyes of the card associations, risk. The merchant services provider, at least we, assume all risk on the transactions that we process. technically, when you accept a credit card, you're supposed to check the person's driver's license. I can't remember the last time that was ever done. The reason being is you want to make sure that it's that person's credit card and not somebody's that they found in the street. So even though in the healthcare industry, you generally don't have to worry about somebody coming in with somebody else's credit card, you know, to make a co-payment or whatnot, the card associations, they don't differentiate. If it's not swiped, they're going to charge you more for it. In a non-qualified world, these would be your business cards, your corporate cards. You could key in a card incorrectly and it would cost you even more. So those of you that are using traditional standalone terminals that look like calculators, if you override those prompts, you're costing yourself money. And just as a little hint, if you see this EIRF on there, just think of that as user error. So if you have a statement and you see that, that means chances are somebody entered a transaction into your terminal incorrectly, or worse yet, the merchant services company didn't prompt the terminal to ask you the questions so that they can make a little bit more money on it. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it does happen. So the non-qualified cost is 3.49%. So if you're using a terminal or you have a staff member that's rushing through trying to get the transaction processed, you could take a card that would normally cost you 1.79% if he or she swiped it and they decided, I'm going to key it in and key it in incorrectly. You paid almost double for it. It's the same card. It's all how it's presented. And again, it all falls back in the eyes of the card association and the processors on the risk. Any transaction that is, any credit card transaction that is processed, the cardholder has a right to, not that they would, but they have a right to dispute it, and that's a risk. And then you get into a whole bunch of different things, which we're really not going to get into now. But you can see on a tiered pricing structure, the merchant services provider will make money on some cards and lose money on others. We call it surfing the margins here. Each practice, depending on the card types that they take, the volume of the cards, we would determine which pricing structure is better for you. Is it the tiered pricing structure? This next one is called Interchange Plus, which means you pay the true cost of the card, which you would anyway, and you do in the tiered pricing structure. The difference is with Interchange Plus pricing, the merchant services provider is making money on every single transaction. They're charging you the true cost of the card plus their markup. Depending again on the card types that you take and the average dollar volume, you don't know which one's going to be better for you. I looked at statements today that was on a very high Interchange Plus markup, but based on their card types, they were better off staying on an interchange pricing structure than if I turned around and said, okay, we're going to give you this three-tiered structure, because they took a lot of cards that were relatively inexpensive and they were able to stay below, in this case, the 1.79% transaction, the 1.79% discount rate. There are other offices that will benefit greatly from being put on a tiered pricing structure because the processor is making money on every single transaction, and we could turn around and say, all right, well, if we put you into a tiered structure, we're going to make money on maybe 60% of the cards. We can lose money on 40% of the cards, but we're still turning a profit in that particular, we use the term bucket, but in that particular tier. So again, we would review the way you're priced. We would see, hopefully they list and display the card types that you're taking, so we're able to come back and say, hey, we think you should be able to benefit from switching pricing structures. The last pricing structure they have out there is flat rate. I know Stripe does it, Square does it. Square, I've never really considered a merchant services provider, since it's pretty much just one merchant account for every business entity in the country that takes their credit card. Instamed does something similar to this. The problem with doing this is they are guaranteeing themselves at least 2.75% to 2.9% on every card that you swipe. Whereas if you're on the mid-qualified or a tiered pricing structure, some of those cards would be 1.79 or they could be 2.49. So you're already overpaying on probably 2/3 of the cards that you're accepting. And when you go back to this, and I know Instamet does it, they have a wonderful term besides keyed in, they call them premium. But they're not going to tell you what they consider a premium card. So now all of a sudden you're up to 3.5%. Their version of premium could be our version of mid-qualified or our version of non-qualified or another processor's version of mid-qualified or non-qualified. So if you're on flat rate, yeah, you think, okay, it's great. I'm either paying 2.75% or I'm paying 3.5%. It's nice and simple. This is what I'm paying. But it might not be best or most cost effective for your particular practice. And again, that's something that we would try and review, or any merchant services provider, if you were having them review the statement, would turn around and recommend something for you. So the flat rate, in my opinion, is generally the worst for particularly a healthcare business, because you get a lot of copays. Copays are generally debit cards. Debit cards, as you see, if you go back to the slide, if you remember, it's like 1.79%. You're going to flat rate yourself at 2.75 to 2.9%. You know, that's a full percent on a $100 transaction. That's $1. That adds up over the course of time. When you get to, and this is a basic chart on a $100 transaction, you can think of the term, you'll hear the term basis points. You know, I'm interchange plus 50 basis points. You can think of basis points as a penny or a percentage of 0.01%. And this is just a basic example. If it's a $100 transaction and it's a qualified card, you lose $1.89. If you're on an interchange pricing structure, and in this particular case, we used 49 points above the true cost of the card, on a $100 transaction, the merchant service provider is making 59 cents. But you really can't determine what fees are paid on this because I don't know what card it is. So this little column here, and you can't really go by this particular one. With the flat rate, again, this one, they went for 2.65%. You're paying $2.75 for the same card that you could have paid $1.89 for. The only thing on this particular chart, again, that you're going to notice consistently is this is a mid-qualified transaction. $100 sale, 2.49% is the average tiered price for the tiered rate for a mid-qualified. And then there's the 10-cent transaction, so you lose $2.59. A flat rate company is going to charge you $2.75. Once again, on a cost plus structure, the merchant services provider makes 59 cents. And then you get all the way down to these flat rate, these keyed in, these non-face-to-face transactions. And again, here is a huge discrepancy. You lose $3.09 if you're on a tiered pricing structure, and you lose $3.65 if you're on the flat rate structure from some of these companies out there. They're charging you 3.5% and 15 cents a transaction. So again, that's a quick overview. I don't want to get too wordy, but those are the three pricing structures out there. And again, it's going to depend on where you are, your average ticket size, and the card types that you take, which pricing structure is going to best fit your needs. With that being said, we're going to bring it over back to Brad with what makes healthcare and merchant services realm a little different than, say, a deli or a restaurant.
Right, exactly. So thanks, Rich, for explaining that. It's not something you're going to learn in a quick 20-minute webinar, but we have a team here dedicated to kind of walk you through it We have the ability to take a look at your statement, very similar to the way that they introduced Taylor in the beginning. You could always submit a statement to us, and we could provide you with a side-by-side analysis, where at the bare minimum, you'll have a better understanding about what you're paying today, and then you can see how the savings would translate based off of your Taylor medical relationship with USPAY. So healthcare is a very unique industry, and the revenue cycle and the customer base. So setting up the best type of infrastructure to streamline your checkout process and optimize the cost is vital. So Rich spoke a little bit about keying in a transaction versus swiping or dipping. So that's something that's very important to make sure that you're set up on the correct type of pricing structure. Now, processors can do way more than deduct fees and then deposit money into your bank account. From our perspective, it's the processor's duty to ask the questions that you may not know even to ask, to make sure that you're set up correctly and using the correct type of technology. So why is a healthcare merchant account different than another different type of business's account? One is very important. It's typically very low risk. And we're kind of getting into what risk means a little bit later. You have repeat clients. There's co-payments involved. Outstanding balances. A lot of times there's family members that are making payments for each other. There's a third-party insurance or a secondary insurance company. There's medical charts. You have PCI and HIPAA compliance to deal with. And there's also so many different types of terminals out there that you may not know which is best for you. There are a ton of moving parts when you're taking a credit card payment in general. Now, accepting a copayment often leads to outstanding balances, and then healthcare proxies and family members making payments for each other can have making and updating your medical chart very difficult. And then dealing with insurance companies, receiving an EOB, a virtual credit card, all these type of different practices are unique to your industry. And taking over the phone payment can also make maintaining PCI compliance, which stands for Payment Card Industry, and also HIPAA compliance, very, very confusing. So what I want to do is look at a standard business's revenue cycle. So a standard interaction at a regular type of business kind of looks something like this. A customer comes in, they receive their product or service, and then they make a payment. It's pretty straightforward. There's not too many moving parts. I'm sure some industries have their own challenges also, but I want you to also take a look at what a healthcare visit entails. And this is a very simple healthcare visit. So you're going to have a patient visiting your doctor's office. They receive their service. The provider then has to verify their insurance eligibility with their insurance provider, or that happens before the service even happens. Then they have to determine what the copayment is. The patient then pays the copay, or sometimes they're asked to bill it because they didn't know what it was. After they receive the service, then coverage is determined by the insurance provider. An EOB is sent out to both parties involved. Now, if there is an amount due, then the provider or her staff needs to bill the patient. Then the patient pays, or they don't pay. And that's when the fund begins. So a recent article that we were sent to us not too long ago states that 50% of Americans are carrying medical debt. And you all know this probably way better than we do. And then 46% of that number has a medical debt over $1,000. And this is going back in 2018. So this is before COVID even happened. So the typical approach to having this patient pay the outstanding balance would tend to have the office call, setting out a paper statement, or you have to contract a billing company to try to hunt down the money for you. Now, at the end of the day, when that doesn't work, then it's going to be sent to collections. And each one of these options end up costing the office a lot of time and your staff's time and also money. So understanding the different types of terminal solutions out there and the different technology is designed to dramatically reduce these issues and hiccups that you run into every single day.
So one of the biggest things that you'll find with USPAY and when it comes to the equipment and the payment acceptance methods is we are going to be 100% PCI compliant. We have to be. We do and can integrate on the back end with some of the EMRs and EHRs out there, and those are generally the ones that are also making a point of making sure that their members, or I should say not their members, that their customers are also PCI compliant. The electronic medical records have to be HIPAA compliant. And the medical records that come with a built-in merchant services provider, so to speak, most of them are not PCI compliant, or they may start out PCI compliant, but at the end of the first year, chances are nobody's going to help you go through the self-assessment questionnaire to keep you compliant, which is going to lead you to paying fees anywhere from $19.95 to almost $100 a month because you're not PCI compliant. And again, the software you're using technically doesn't have to be. It has to be HIPAA compliant. So when you see a built-in EMR, EHR program, yes, it's nice and convenient. It is something that your staff technically shouldn't have to worry about. They swipe the card, it posts right to the chart. But when you get right down to it, if I came in with a cash or check payment, you have to manually post it to the chart. And if you break down the number of credit cards you actually take a month and break it down over 5 days, 6 days, God help me if you're working 7 days a week, I feel sorry for you. But 8 hours a day, it works out to maybe a couple of cards an hour, which if you're using a virtual terminal, it's generally a computer. If you have dual monitors, they can copy and paste. Ours happens to be in real time. They can print the reports out every hour, at lunch hour, whatever the case may be, and post in. One of the Taylor members that we enrolled a couple months ago was using, a podiatry-friendly software named Sammy. We saved them $350 a month. They did $9,500 a month in transactions, but because one, it wasn't PCI compliant, so that fee went away. And the processor that was built into the software was charging them a couple of fees that we don't, and they were, I'll call them volume-based fees, meaning the more the practice did, the more the practice actually paid. I'm not calling it a penalty, but it's a fee that the processor put in there because, hey, guess what? Your staff swipes the card and it posts. They don't have to take 2 seconds to post off. Now, to me, $350 is, a car payment and a half a tank of gas. Maybe $350 to other people out there is not. But like Brad was saying, you get family members involved. If you have office staff that is related to the provider, they're going to want to look at the bottom line. The provider and the owner of the practice is going to want to look at the bottom line. Some offices may not. I don't care if Dr. Smith makes an extra $350, but those are things that as the owners and the office managers of the practice, you may want to take a look at. Is it worth a couple $100 a month to have my staff spend an extra couple seconds? Physical terminals, they are, it would be like taking cash or check payments. They're not going to integrate with anything, but you may want to be able to move around, or you may not have great internet access. We have practices that we can't set up with web-based equipment because the internet's constantly going down. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're not able to take a payment because Mother Nature or your internet's not working. And the online portals, a lot of businesses, a lot of medical practices have the ability for their patients to go online and see their medical charts and make payments and whatnot. You can also have the ability to have your patients make payments, whether it be through an EMR or EHR. You're going to pay a little bit more for that, or a separate pay my bill button listed on your website where you can either direct the patient there via text message or via email, or on the bottom of the statement and say, hey, Rich, your EOB kicked in, you owe us $25. I know you can't get here because you work, but go online and make your payment. So the terminal solutions, again, like Brad was saying, merchant services company, your agent should be asking you, what do you do? How do you do things? And how would you like to accept payments? Not just give you something that they want to sell so that they can make commission off of, or whether they make commission or not, but they should be setting you up with what you need, not what they want to give you. With this particular point, I know Brad wanted to take it, but with the accounts receivables, again, it all goes into products that we have are designed to make it so that you're able to collect revenue without having to use third-party billers or worse, collection agencies. Yeah, Brad.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what I wanted to lead into. So the terminal solution and your processor means a lot more than what a lot of people think at face value. Typically, you may have a bank that would reach out when you're setting up your checking account, or you might have someone walk into your facility and ask you how you're taking your payments and ask you for a statement. Because all they're going to do is trying to cut your price down and then give you a piece of equipment that now costs you $50 a month, and they're making their money on the equipment. There's a lot of different sales tactics and different type of competitive advantages that people pretend to have. At the end of the day, you need to ask the questions of how will this help my practice? Because if you're using a standalone terminal, because that's the best thing for your business, that's fine. But if you're a multi-location office that needs the ability to take payments remotely, or if you want to be able to store credit cards on file, these are things that your merchant service can provide to you at no cost. And it's not even talking about the rates, it's simply the terminal solution that you're going to be signed up with. So more and more, we're getting businesses that want to have SMS, text message, or e-statements, where setting out a paper statement may still be something you're doing, but we kind of call them dummy statements because you're spending 50 cents a stamp. You're also having to bag it and send it out, typically getting less than 10% return on those. What we would recommend would be to keep doing the paper statements for some time, put your website on the bottom and ask them to visit your website and make the payment. We could also email it or text it to them where they can make a payment 24/7. And one of the questions I always ask is, how do you take a payment when your office is closed? And sometimes that throws members off guard because they don't even think about that aspect of, I can collect revenue when my office is closed. Now, typically for me, and I know a lot of other people, when they get out of work, the doctor's office is closed. So when they try to give a phone call to pay that payment, there's no one there to collect it. So giving multiple revenue options is important. Giving people the ability to pay only increases their likelihood that they will. So your merchant service provider can do more than simply collect simply deposit money into your bank account and deduct fees. They should be a partner with your business where as you grow, they grow with you. All right, now, Rich, you can come in on this, and I'll also talk a little bit about this. Now, USPAY, we're a specialty healthcare credit card processor. That's all we do all day long is set up healthcare facilities. We process for more than 25,000 healthcare facilities throughout the United States, ranging from single location practices up to hospital networks. Now, understanding the day-to-day, understanding the importance for security and compliance, and the way your business works is something that we pride ourselves in. We have teams here that have been working in the healthcare field for years, and then they came over to merchant services because of their industry knowledge. We're a merchant service provider that has your business's best interest at heart, and we have the team, the technology, and relationships to kind of help grow with your business.
Yeah,
Rich, go ahead.
As Brett was saying, about 80–85% of our portfolio is healthcare. It is not 100% healthcare because as the GPOs themselves, some of the earlier contracts that we had expanded into non-healthcare avenues as they brought on suppliers that not necessarily had to stay in healthcare. U.S. Foods contracts come on board. Well, now all of a sudden, any business that needs a U.S. Food contract becomes a GPO member. And again, they're all treated the same. They're just offered different products and different solutions. Once again, whether you are, Mount Sinai Medical Center down in Florida or an individual doctor, out somewhere, working, even if it's an office out of their house, you're all part of the GPO, and we're able to treat everybody the same. And because of the products and services that we have, we can figure out something that's going to be best for you, whether it be a standalone machine, or because again, we're going to ask you, what do you need? And if you're not 100% sure, then we'll probe a little bit further. So with that being said, I believe we can open it up for questions and answers.
All right. So if you have any questions, please type them into the questions tab. And Dr. DeHere, do you want to start off with some questions?
Sure. If I process with USPAY, how do I know you would be giving me a good rate?
Cool, Rich.
Yeah, I'll
sure.
take it.
Go ahead, Rich.
First off, in the case of the Taylor Medical members, again, we have come through, or coming to them through the Provista GPO, so we were vetted out. We have to respond not only to you, Dr. DeHere, but if we were quote unquote playing games, we would have to also answer to Provista. So we're not going to risk the GPO contracts by turning around and setting you up with a rate that's not legitimate. It's not going to do anybody any good to have you process with us for a month or a week when you get your statement and say, hey, I'm actually paying more, because then all you're going to do is complain and you're going to leave. So the fact that we have the contracts, and again, this business was started almost 15 years ago in the healthcare industry because it was an area that upper management felt was being basically taken advantage of. The doctors, if nobody looks, they really don't know what they're paying.
Yep. And to kind of piggyback on that quickly is that when we won the bid, we have pre-negotiated rates that we had to win that RFP for, that request for proposal. They sent it out to probably hundreds of different merchant service providers. We're a direct processor with the card brands. There's no middleman with us. So typically if you have a merchant service provider, they're kicking up down the ladder because other people are eating off that account. With USPAY, it's direct. It's USPAY and the card brands. There's no one else eating off of it. And we're not looking at your business as one single practice. We're looking at you as a member of Taylor. So we're going to leverage that buying power to give you that best possible price.
All right. What's the difference between a standard processor and a group verified processor?
Well, yeah, Rich kind of started on that in the beginning when he just was answering this one. So if a standard processor loses your business, there's no real repercussions. They lose that one account and that's it. They move on to the next. We have strict guidelines that we have to uphold to win your bid. There's terms and conditions, and we're going to do everything to make sure that you're happy and you're using the most up-to-date compliant technology out there. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add on, Rich.
No, that's basically it. I mean, we were awarded the contract, so chances are we're going to be contacting you, not the local bank on the corner, or the guy's working out of his house writing for multiple processors, who's going to just sign up as many people as he can at whatever rate he can for as long as he can.
I had another question. If USPAY integrates with my EMR, how does that affect my office and staff?
It doesn't. They wouldn't really notice any difference. Basically, an integration with an EMR or EHR is just, without being a techie, because I'm certainly not, the API address on the back end would go from, say, Clover to USPAY. Otherwise, your office wouldn't notice anything different.
Cool. Yeah, and the way I like to explain it, in a little bit more of a layman's term that I've come to realize helps, is that so many people are using apps nowadays. So if you go to like Uber or Grubhub, if you're using that as a consumer and they change their credit card processor, you wouldn't know the difference. Your interactions with that applications remain the same. So you and your staff are going to be using that certain EMR or using that software. Your interactions remain exactly the same. The only difference you're going to see is they're going to be larger deposits in your bank account on a daily basis because the system stays the same, but we're reducing the rates.
Just to touch on my lack of technical expertise, somebody wrote a question in the chat. How do I answer it?
just
Brad, if you know how to do it, just answer it.
Just answer it.
Brad, if you know how to answer it,
Yeah,
I have no
sure.
idea.
So we had somebody wrote in here saying, where would we send our current credit card fees for us to review? So we do that every single day. And for Taylor Medicals in general, what we offered was if you send us your merchant statement and then you sit down for a review with someone on our team, you were going to provide you with a $20 gift card. It's a $20 Visa gift card just for you sitting down with us. There's no obligation for you to sign up, but we want to educate you on how you're being priced today and show you how that savings would translate. So we'll put a link. Excuse me one second. Sorry, Rich. We'll put a link into the chat so everybody knows where to submit that. But what other questions do you see, Rich?
No, that's not what I meant. I could have answered them verbally. I meant, how do I put it in the chat?
No,
I'll put
better
your email in there.
verbally, so it's on the recording. It's okay. But keep the link in the chat.
Like I said, I'm here. My computer's on. I didn't crash the system. I did good.
How much does the equipment cost?
There's no cost for the equipment for the Taylor Medical members. Generally, each office is entitled to one free device. If you need more than one, we generally get them out at our cost to you.
And I guess one last question for me is, can a business have more than one merchant account?
Yeah, absolutely. In the eyes of the Card Association, a retail account would be like the people in the office. So that would be something we could set up, like a virtual terminal. And then if you wanted the ability to collect payments when the office is closed, in other words, some sort of payment on your website, that's considered an e-commerce account. That is another merchant account. So yeah, you can generally have 2 merchant accounts per federal tax ID number is the best way to put it.
And there's a little bit of a reason behind that too. So when we were talking about the way cards are being priced and why a card would hit a certain bucket or not, when you're looking at that, the way the card is being accepted dramatically changes the cost of it. So if you're accepting that card face to face and we can give you that retail account, you're going to be able to optimize the pricing structure, keep it as low as possible, meaning that the card is present. Now, if you're taking phoned-in payments, you can still process on those cards. You can still process on that account, but they're going to downgrade. So it's going to cost more. If you find that your business is taking a good enough amount of volume with the card not present, what we're going to recommend is that you would create a separate merchant account for a billing office or maybe for an over-the-phone office that would be able to optimize the pricing for an over-the-phone account, which is called a Moto account, which would bring your cost down. But again, that's one of the things that we like to ask. How do you take your payments? Is it typically face-to-face or over the phone, or do you have a billing office? Because with that data, we're going to optimize the pricing structure. We're not cookie cutter, like Rich said earlier. We're going to make sure that your practice is set up the way that your business takes payments. It's going to be different for every single office out there.
All right. Well, guys, that's all the questions we have, and thank you for putting the email in the chat for those who want to send your merchant accounts over to USPAY. This way you can get it checked out and see what kind of savings you can realize.
Right.
So guys, thank you very much for joining us. I would like to let everyone know that our next Taylor Tuesday is going to be Tuesday, June 21st at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, preparing your practice for 3D orthosis scanning using a smartphone from Kevin Root Medical. And I hope you can join us then. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And want to thank you to Rich and to Brad for joining us and giving us all the good information. And we look forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you again, guys. Have a great evening.
Thank you again. Appreciate the opportunity. Take care, guys.
Bye.